Hello and welcome to Hoffman Naturopathic, the podcast where I discuss all things mental health, mind, body medicine, and bringing the spiritual to the everyday. If you want to know what it's like to live with full integration of mind, body, and spirit, you are in the right place, and I'm so glad you're here. Hey friends, how are you doing today? I hope that you're doing really well. I'm excited to be coming to you today from the East Coast rather than the West Coast. I get to spend some time with my family out here in Maryland, and had the good fortune to get sick while I was here. So I'm just getting over a cold if my voice sounds a little stuffy and snuffly. So if I have a few sniffles, I apologize. Please excuse those, but I'll try my very best not to. And the last few episodes, I've been talking a lot about intuition and different aspects of it. Last week I talked about self-love, and a little bit how that relates to intuition and being able to make decisions that are right for you. And today I'm going to address something that comes up for a lot of people, which is having some unpleasant feelings, even when you know that a decision that you're making is right for you. You've checked in logically, it looks good on paper, you've checked in intuitively, it feels right in your body, but still there are some feelings there. So that's what I'm going to address today. Before I get there though, I did want to note that today's podcast is sponsored by none other than Actionable Intuition, which is a course that's designed to really bring intuitive knowing into a tangible and daily tool, practices that help make it usable and reliable, rather than just, some buzzword, and maybe sometimes you get intuitive knowing and sometimes you don't. Nope, Actionable Intuition is the course to take if you want to make sure that every day, all the time, you can access and make great use of your intuition. So, all right. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes so you can check that out if you're interested. So, coming back to today's topic, which is all about having some unpleasant feelings, even if you know logically and intuitively that a decision you're making is right for you. And this is really common. So, some common places where this comes up, things like relationships changing if you're breaking up with someone, getting a divorce even, job changes, switching careers, things like moving, even if you're moving across town, if you're moving states, across country, new country altogether, all of these things and more, this list could be really endless, but all of these things are really big decisions that involve really big transitions. And when transitions happen, it's completely normal to have a lot of feelings around that. And of course, sometimes this isn't true. Sometimes it just feels great and we're ready to go and we make our move and there's no troubles. But a lot of times there are a lot of feelings, and these feelings can vary quite widely. But it doesn't mean that you're making a bad decision. And this can be hard to come to terms with for folks, because if there are feelings of sadness or resentment or doubt or this or that, how could this possibly be the right decision? So let's talk about this. Some common feelings that come up in the midst of these decisions and transitions. Well, let me back up for a second. So say you're facing something like, a breakup, and it's a relationship that you've been in for a while, but for whatever reason, it just isn't quite working out. You're not feeling great about it. And just, you've checked in logically, maybe you're moving, getting a new job or something like this, and the person that you're with doesn't want to move. They have their life established in the place where you already live. So say that that's the case, but for you, it really is the right decision to make this move, to go to that new job or to move where you're planning to move. And so you've checked it out logically, it makes sense. The job that you're going to, you really love, maybe the pay is really good, you're feeling really jazzed about it, you're completely in love with what you're going to go be doing, or what you're going to be doing once you move. And so you've decided, this is really, I would love to stay and be with you, but for me, this is really the right decision. You feel good in your body about it, and yet you feel sad, and maybe there's some self-doubt of as that day gets closer, as that time draws down to an end, that feeling of oh no, I don't know if this is actually right. Is this the best decision? And then fear. So like, what if I never find someone anymore, or there could be, I'm never going to make any more friends, or I'm not going to meet anybody, or like, how is this ever going to work out? Or if you're in a situation where you've been putting up with a less than stellar relationship or a less than stellar situation, maybe there's a little bit of resentment, just like, oh, I can't believe I put up with this for so long, and this person has been disrespectful, or whatever it might be. And so all of this is completely normal. There is not necessarily anything wrong. And it can be super rattling, really can put you off your game if you get that day comes closer where you're moving, or that day comes closer where you're making that big transition, and just all of a sudden all these feelings happen, or even as you're in the process of moving, or as you're in the process of physically making whatever transition you're making. And so what's really helpful in these moments is to check in. You can always check in with yourself. You can always reassess your decision. You can always change your mind. These are all great options. And simply knowing that can make a huge difference and really impact your confidence and your courage to move forward with your decision and transition. And so one really good way to reassess at any time is to do that same process that you did while you were making a decision. And if you are new to this or haven't heard me talk about this before, marrying logic and intuition is all about, first of all, doing the logic work. So maybe even getting out a piece of paper and thinking through, like, okay, pros, cons, what is this going to look like? What am I losing? What am I gaining? What are the benefits and costs? And doing I like to do a really thorough risk-benefit analysis. So doing that work. And then after you've done the logical work and that really, the heavy cognitive lifting, letting that go, setting it aside, taking some time in meditation, and checking in with your intuition. So checking in with your body. How does your body feel? If I make one decision, how does that sit with me? How does that sit in my body? And if I make a different decision, how does that sit in my body? How do I feel about that? And this can look like any number of things. So I'll give you an example. As I was looking at different residency options and job options after graduation, when I was deciding whether or not to keep going with the residency process, I sat down. Actually, I didn't sit down because it came up in my body very strongly. I had a very strong reaction, which was my shoulder. I occasionally will get this upper back pain, which isn't normal for me. And as I was looking at these different options, my shoulder sort of seized up a little bit. I got really intense gripping pain in my left shoulder. And also my breath, I just couldn't catch a deep breath. And so I felt like I was in a panic. And so I did sit down at that point. I was like, okay, if I just decide to let this go, how does that sit in my body? And instantaneously, everything relaxed. My shoulder didn't hurt. My arm didn't hurt. I had full range of motion. I could get a full deep breath in. And at that moment, I was like, okay, yep, gonna let this one go. This is not right for me right now. On paper, it looks beautiful. And also on paper, there are some things like I don't want to uproot my life if I'm not loving where I'm going, these kinds of things. And so the logic and the intuition came together in that way. And so you can do the same thing. If you start to have new symptoms, or if some symptoms go away, these are really good indications from our body that a decision we're making is either good or maybe not so good. So, and you will have to know for you what that looks like. And this is why doing this work on a regular basis is really important, because this is how we keep in touch with our bodies, how we know what signals our bodies are giving us. And if we don't do this work on a regular basis, we miss out on so much great information. So, okay, so so you've made a big decision. I'm returning back. I went on a little digression there, so I'm coming back to our main conversation. So you've made a big decision to move, and at the time you felt great about it, felt really clear. Logically, it makes a lot of good sense. Intuitively, you're like, okay, my body is really responding well to this decision. It's giving me really positive feedback and information about it. And then it comes time to move. And then you're feeling sad. you're like, oh my gosh, I've lived here for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and I don't want to leave. I love this place. I have so many friends here. My community is great. My job, like, I'm going to have to learn all this new stuff and maybe I should just stay. So reassess. Totally great. So check back in with your body. Whatever the emotional, sort of, I don't know if surface is the right word because emotions aren't necessarily always surface, but if you go deeper beneath whatever the sadness that you're experiencing, how does your body feel? Do you feel at ease in your body? Does your gut feel open and clear or not so much? So just check back in and see how that's going. And then sometimes this isn't even enough information because if we're really in the grips of feeling that, it can be challenging to differentiate what's related to that sadness and what's the deeper wisdom that you have. So another thing that you can do is take, 5-10 minutes to yourself somewhere quiet and think, I am feeling really sad right now, but the peace that comes with this decision, are these equal? Or is the peace I have greater, or is the peace I have less? If I game this out 5-10 years down the line, what decision would I tell myself to have made? And so this is another way to reassess and think, okay, if I put some perspective on this, if I put myself out 5 years, what do I anticipate the results from this decision will be? And I will caution you that, not caution, but more than likely the results will not be exactly what you thought they were. But if you're making a decision that's in line with your intuition, the results will be better than you expect. So even keeping that in mind, that if you are in line with your intuition, that the results are going to be better than you hoped they would be, because they can't not be, because you're listening to that inner wisdom and it will not lead you wrong. So check back in with your body, sort of game it out a few years down the line and check in with your hypothetical future self and see what they might have to say to you. And then also do some of that cognitive work again. If you are the kind of person that writes down a pro and con list, revisit that. Is it still the same? Have things changed? And if things have changed, because situations do change, it's totally fine. Totally okay to make a different decision. And maybe the situation is exactly the same and you just have to remind yourself that, yeah, this is hard. Like, this is hard to do in the meantime. And I know that what's on this piece of paper, what's in my mind, what I trust my intelligence and my thoughtful process to tell me, what I trust my body to tell you is true. So all of that said, I think at the end of all of this, it's most important just to be as gentle with yourself as you can be and know that big decisions are big decisions. They're hard to make. And any feelings that you're having are totally normal and it's totally okay. And you have all of the permission to stick with your decision, to make a different decision, to check back in and, make sure like, oh yeah, this is still right. And also know that you're always doing the best you can with what you know. And like I said a little bit earlier, situations evolve and change. And so you get more information, you feel things out a little bit more, maybe you go visit a potential job and it looked great on paper, but like, maybe not so much. And so the more that you know and the more situations evolve, the more information you have to make a decision. And so that might change and that's totally okay. And at the end of it all, the only person that you have to answer to is yourself. And you don't have to answer to yourself, but you do have to live with the decisions that you make. And no one else really does. You're the one who has to go to bed at night knowing that, okay, I decided to uproot everything and move across the country for this job, or I decided to get married to this person, or I decided to, get a divorce, or whatever it might be. And although these decisions do have an effect on other people in our lives, they're not necessarily the ones who have to live with having made that decision, and you do. So I think that's why gaming it out a few years and seeing what your hypothetical future self might have to tell you is a really good idea. And also because there are a lot of situations in which, there's not necessarily a wrong answer. Maybe there's a excuse my language, there's a bad response and a less bad response. Or there's like a shiny, sparkly option and a slightly less shiny, sparkly option. So, it very rarely is that you are looking at two excellent options or two terrible options. At any rate, so what I'm trying to say here is that be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, know that emotions come up and it's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And that you're going to be okay and that you can change your mind if you want to. So, all right, friends, I hope that you're doing really well. I hope whatever transitions or decisions you're facing, you have the courage to face with as much gumption and boldness as you possibly can. And I will talk to you next week. All right, take care.